As you all now know, the official death toll in Texas has already surpassed 100 due to severe flash flooding. And I've got to say, all of this is heartbreaking, but one of the tragedies that really stood with me was the catastrophe at Camp Mystic, where 27 campers and counselors staying in cabins along the Guadalupe River were all killed. It's just utterly devastating. I'm not a parent, but I can't imagine what it would be like for a parent to send your kid to summer camp only to have them never come home. It's just so sad. And what makes things worse is the thought that these deaths possibly could have been prevented had local leaders taken the threat of flash flooding seriously. But unfortunately for their constituents, local leaders chose to gamble with their lives to save a few bucks, and it didn't end well, as we now know. The New York Times reports officials feared flood risk to youth camps but rejected a warning system, and they go on to explain that officials in Kerr County in particular actually considered installing a warning system along the Guadalupe riverbanks, but local lawmakers thought that the price was too high, so they didn't. One commissioner stupidly even called mitigation efforts extravagant, even though their territory is literally referred to as Flash Flood Alley because of how common flash flooding is. But they chose to be cheap, and now people are dead as a result of their cheapness, including children. But that system, would it have saved their lives? I don't know. Nobody knows for sure. But those lawmakers now have to live with the fact that they didn't do everything that they could have to prevent a tragedy like this from happening when they knew it was possible. But regardless if it could have been prevented, politicians should now, more than ever, take the time to stop this from happening in the future. Take action now to mitigate the harm caused by extreme weather events that will continue to occur because of climate change. Now is the time, yesterday, more specifically, is the time to climate-proof cities, since extreme weather events are going to become increasingly common, like they're happening all the time now. So take action now. And we shouldn't just focus on mitigation, but also adaptation, because climate change is here. We can't stop all of it, if we can even stop some of it. But we have to adapt to the disaster that we have brought upon ourselves. But me saying that seems pointless, if not laughable, because that's not what politicians are doing. It's just not. That's unrealistic to say that. In fact, they're literally doing the opposite right now. Last week, Republicans voted to take away subsidies for renewable technology in Trump's big, beautiful bill, which is a gift to the fossil fuel companies that funded their campaigns. And these very companies are getting a gift after they have accelerated the climate crisis. So, they're pouring gasoline on the fire, so to speak, and that would be bad enough. But they're also, to make matters worse, taking this opportunity to conspiracy monger and propose solutions to problems that don't exist to make it seem like they're helping. For example, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who vocalized her belief that Democrats can control weather and also implied that Democrats created Hurricane Helene, I guess to suppress Republican turnout in red states during the election, she decided to take this opportunity to boast about legislation that she sponsored that criminalizes weather control technology that doesn't fucking exist. I'm not joking about this. She wrote on Twitter, "I am writing to introduce a bill that prohibits the injection, release, or dispersion of chemicals or substances into the atmosphere for the express purpose of altering weather, temperature, climate, or sunlight intensity. It will be a felony offense. I have been researching weather modification and working with the Legislative Council for months writing this bill. It will be similar to Florida Senate Bill 56. We must end the dangerous and deadly practice of weather modification and geo-engineering." She adds, "This is not normal. I want clean air, clean skies, clean rainwater, clean groundwater, and sunshine just like God created it. No person, company, entity, or government should ever be allowed to modify our weather by any means possible. Honored to add Tim Burchett as a co-sponsor and look forward to working with more members of Congress, hopefully on both sides of the aisle." Now, seeing a post like this would usually make me feel exasperated and downright depressed, and it did, because this level of stupidity isn't acceptable for any adult, let alone a lawmaker. But thankfully, I don't feel as hopeless and bad as I usually do, since in response to this dumbass tweet, the entire internet decided to weigh in and drag Marjorie Greene's dumbass for doing this shit now of all times, when I feel like it's not, I don't want to civility police, but when people are dying, you should at least maybe pretend to care, but she's not. She's saying, hey, now is the time to support my legislation that criminalizes weather control. Maybe save this for a different time. Anyways, people responded, and seeing this was great. For example, Oil Pack Tracker chimed in saying, "Wait, I have news for you. Fossil fuel industry has been doing this for decades, and you gave them more tax breaks last week." And they're right, of course, referring to her vote for the big, beautiful bill. Ryan Hall says families just lost everything to flooding and extreme weather, and instead of support or solutions, we get bills about controlling sunlight. This country deserves better than performative nonsense. Maddox writes, "You may be the dumbest, most uninformed person in the history of modern politics. I hope they can figure out which chemical caused your cognitive issues." Anonymous says, "So it wasn't God that flooded Texas because it was the Dems' weather modification program and totally not climate change, and it was a red state, and red states don't have climate change. It's Joe Biden's fault." Okay. Carly Kingsley weighed in saying, "Or maybe just don't vote to defund the thing that tells people about these things while also defunding the programs that fix the things that keep these things from happening. Just the thought. Start there." And I've got to say, seeing these comments was so validating to me because we've reached an era in American politics where people's stupidity has become so overwhelming that it almost feels powerful, if that makes sense. Like their stupidity somehow manages to suck the life out of you as if it's some sort of a black hole consuming everything around it. Although in this instance, rather than consuming matter and light, it's consuming my patience and remaining brain cells. It leaves you feeling so utterly powerless in the face of such profound stupidity that you don't even feel inclined to challenge it, since there's no way of getting through to the dumbass espousing such horseshit. We're reaching levels of stupidity that are nearly impossible to even fathom. It's to the point where their stupidity almost incapacitates you in a sense and leaves you feeling paralyzed trying to figure out what to even say in response because you know what they're saying is so idiotic that it feels pointless to even try to combat their stupidity. So needless to say, I appreciate the individuals that chose to drag her because they make me feel a little bit more sane. But with that being said, there were an alarming number of people in her replies that were thanking her for her truth-telling. And that is another soul crusher. And one thing that I will say is that she is right about, Florida proposing this as well. That did happen, yes. And I think that she probably modeled her legislation after theirs. Florida does have SB 56, which would also ban so-called weather modification technology. But they're not alone because Florida is just one of 8 states that proposed bans on what The Guardian is calling chemtrail-coded legislation that takes aim at geoengineering and weather modification technology that literally does not exist. And I can't stress that enough. Republicans are trying to ban technology that does not exist. It only exists in sci-fi novels. So a once fringe conspiracy theory is being mainstreamed by Republican politicians across the country. And I wish I could say that this is just like a Marjorie thing. She's so kooky, that's just her. But she's one of many Republicans pushing the idea that Democrats can control the weather or that chemtrails are poisoning us. I guess that's the conspiracy theory. I mean, RFK Jr., the HHS secretary, responded to a conspiracy video about chemtrails and called it a crime. There's also Candace Taylor, a former GOP leader in Georgia who's now running for Congress, who tweeted this in response to flash flooding in Texas. Quote, "Fake weather, fake hurricanes, fake flooding, fake, fake, fake." She then seemingly perceived the community note, as well as people shitting on her for her dumbass take, as evidence that she was right, saying, "I stepped on a sacred cow," as if she inadvertently stumbled across some forbidden truth. She then polled her followers to ask if they also believe that the weather is being modified, and a majority of the 572 people that voted said yes. Now, that's just a Twitter poll. It's not scientific, so take it with a grain of salt, but that poll is representative of other people who are vocalizing the same types of opinions about Democrats controlling the weather. And this is what I mean about their stupidity being a black hole, because when you debunk it, you end up feeding it and making it bigger and stronger because they view pushback as validation that they're onto some hidden truth that everyone is desperately trying to conceal. So they interpret you telling them that they're wrong as confirmation that they're right. And explanations and facts don't seem to help at all. But some people, they are still trying. For example, there's Matthew Capucci, a literal meteorologist who has been answering questions from conservatives on Twitter about the weather. And he also has tried to shed some light on things that are happening that conservatives don't understand and thus create conspiracy theories out of. And here's one of the clips that he shared about geoengineering that conservatives are hysterical about.
Big issue that we have with conspiracy theory folks is that they sort of conflate things that don't really go together.
Right.
So they conflate cloud seeding with hurricane modification.
Or cloud seeding with chemtrails.
That too. Now, we can seed a cloud, but think about the scale of a cloud versus the scale of a hurricane. You have a hurricane which expends the energy of 10,000 nuclear bombs, or a little fluffy cumulus cloud. Now, the idea of cloud seeding is that we're taking moisture that's already up there and just getting that moisture to fall. The goal of cloud seeding is to get those droplets to coalesce onto something, to put a little teeny particulate up there, like silver iodide, get them to coalesce and fall. So, like in Dubai, they do that, and it works a little bit. They can't create moisture.
They had floods recently because of that, right?
No. So they had floods, but that was an entirely different idea. So that's kind of the scale argument we're getting at. The floods were caused by something called a mesoscale convective complex, a big flare-up of thunderstorms that stalled and parked over the area, courtesy of antecedent weather conditions. What Dubai does is say, hey, we don't get enough rain. We need the rain for our infrastructure. There's some moisture up there, but it's not falling. Let's try to get this cloud to drop its moisture. And they fly up there. They go through the cloud, they sprinkle some silver iodide, and you get a little bit more moisture to fall. You get a little bit more rain. You're not able to create storm systems.
Honestly, bless his heart, because I can't imagine how exhausting it would be as a scientist to take time out of your day to explain to adults that Democrats don't have fucking hurricane guns that they're shooting at red states. Like, I feel like that is so, it's got to be demoralizing if you're a scientist, right? It's demoralizing for me as somebody who's not a professional, but to have to be a meteorologist and say, no, we can't control the weather, I feel like that's got to be so soul-crushing. And, you know, I would like to think that the effort of individuals like him and other professionals, epidemiologists like Gabrielle Perry and Caitlin Genelina, that's not in vain. Like, their effort to inform the public in a sea of misinformation, it's not all for nothing. But it's so hard to not feel hopeless given the scale of the stupidity that we're facing as a society. And just to show you what I mean, Candace Taylor, the Republican congressional candidate who called the weather fake, is also a flat earther, unsurprisingly. Actually, I should be a little bit more charitable in my description of her. She wouldn't identify as a flat earther, and she says she's not a flat earther. She just has questions about the shape of the earth, and she platforms flat earthers on her podcast called Jesus, Guns, and Babies. Yes, that's the name of her podcast. And they explain why the earth is flat, and she doesn't push back at all. But I want to show you the clip of this where she explains why she thinks it's reasonable to question whether or not the earth really is a sphere. This is like impeccable logic here, folks.
It doesn't make sense. So is it or not? I don't know 100%, but it's just, it doesn't make sense the other way. Now that you see it.
The people that defend the globe don't know anything about the globe, because if they knew a tenth of what Matt and I know about the globe, they would be flat earthers, because it's absolutely ridiculous.
I can't unsee this. All the globes everywhere. I turn on TV, there's globes in the background. There's globes on there right here. Like, this would be a globe if I was a normal person. Like, everywhere there's globes. You see them all the time. I mean, it's constant. My children will be like, Mama, globe, 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 globe. They're everywhere. And that's what they do to brainwash. And so for me, if it is not a conspiracy, if it is, real, why are you pushing so hard? Everywhere I go, every store, you buy a globe. There's globes everywhere, every movie, every TV show, news media. Why?
So because she sees a lot of globes, that to her is confirmation that the world might be flat, because the ubiquity of globes is evidence of a conspiracy to reinforce the idea that the earth is spherical when it's not. Yeah, that's a way of reasoning that defies logic and common sense, and it's really an insult to adults everywhere. But I mean, if you're one of the people like me who actually does like globes and astronomy, then I guess you're part of the cover-up. I didn't know that I was part of a cover-up, so this is news to me. Maybe we're all just like unwittingly partaking in a cover-up, but I feel like globes are cool because I think it's awesome to be reminded of the fact that we're on a random rock that's orbiting some random-ass star in a random-ass galaxy in a mysterious universe. We're basically specks of dust, and that's a really cool thing to think about. But Candace Owens just thinks that it's evidence that the earth is flat. I can't do it. Oh my God, I can't do it. So we're dealing with people who are contrarians, where believing the opposite of what intellectuals believe somehow makes you smart and a truth teller. But it's not just that they're contrarians, they're also terminally stupid, and they lack basic common sense. I mean, think about it. It's not just flat earth and weather conspiracies that we're dealing with. There's anti-vax conspiracies, as well as raw milk consumption that have become trendy in right-wing circles because a significant portion of the population is living in La La Land. And when you consider how racist and cruel these people also are who are pushing these dumbass conspiracy theories, it's hard to not conclude that American conservatism has devolved into a fascist conspiratorial death cult that is ripping us apart. Like, I don't know how we're supposed to address this as a country. No amount of re-education can repair the sheer scale of brain damage caused by the mental plague that is conservatism. Maybe, the Marjorie Greenes and the Candace Taylors of the world are just uninformed dupes. And, I think that's possible. It's also possible that they're knowingly peddling cartoonishly dumb conspiracy theories to distract the peasants from their harmful economic agenda. I don't know. But at this point, I don't give a shit. It's a distinction without a difference, because regardless of their intent or whether or not they truthfully believe these things, these people are literally destroying our country, and our inability to stop the spread of their stupidity could actually destroy the planet as well. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, no matter how hopeless you feel in the face of overwhelming stupidity from these people, never ever stop challenging it. Because even though you can argue that they've already won, I refuse to go down without a fucking fight. So as pointless as it feels, don't let them spew their bullshit with no pushback, because we can't afford to let them pull the rest of society into their alternate reality.
Like, everywhere there's globes. You see them all the time. I mean, it's constant. My children will be like, Mama, globe, 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 globe. I turn on TV, there's globes in the background. Every TV show, news media,
globe, 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 globe. They're everywhere. Globe, 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 globe.